Hello and welcome to PMQs with Graham Hughes on Politics Social. We're going to go straight over so we can get a chance to do a bit more there. Ooh, a bunch of animations come up.
Mr. Speaker, tomorrow marks 13 years since 6 young British soldiers were on patrol in Afghanistan when their vehicle was struck by an explosive, tragically killing them all. Sergeant Nigel Farage was 33. Corporal Jake Hartley was 20. Private Anthony Frampton was 20. Private Daniel Wade was 20. Private Daniel Wilford was 21. And Private Christopher Kershaw was just 19, a teenager. Tomorrow also marks the 18th anniversary of the death of Benjamin Reddy, a 22-year-old serving with 42 Commando Royal Marines, killed in Helmand Provost in 2007. These men fought and died for their country, our country. And across the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, 642 individuals died fighting for Britain alongside our allies. Many more were wounded. We will never forget their bravery and their sacrifice. And I know the whole House will join in me in remembering them and all those who serve our country. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has rightly made growth his key mission. But can he outline for my constituents in Southampton Test how our employment rights bill will not only deliver improvements for them, but also put more money in their pockets as part of our plan?
Well, I thank my honourable friend. She's doing a fantastic job for her constituents. The Employment Rights Bill is the biggest upgrade to workers' rights in a generation. Benefit more than 10 million workers in every corner of the country. It will tackle low pay, poor conditions and poor job security that hold our country back. It is pro-worker, pro-business and pro-growth.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Divisions between Ukraine and the US only serve Vladimir Putin. President Zelensky is right to try and rebuild his relationship with President Trump. He is keeping a cool head under very difficult circumstances. And I was glad to see President Trump receive his letter positively. What is the Prime Minister doing to help rebuild their relationship after a challenging week?
Minister.
Well, she's absolutely right that we need to do everything we can to ensure that the US, Europe and Ukraine are working together on lasting peace. And I'm doing everything I can to play my part in that, in regular contact with all of the key players at the moment, including talking to President Zelensky yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, that felt like a stage question, didn't it?
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Prime Minister for that answer.
Right.
All of us in this House know that the British Armed Forces are a huge source of pride to our country. They put themselves in harm's way to defend our values. As the opposition, we support efforts to resolve this conflict, but we cannot write a blank cheque. If British peacekeeping troops in Ukraine were attacked, whether directly or via proxies, we could be drawn into conflict with Russia.
Yes, good.
Can the Prime Minister reassure all those who are concerned about the UK being drawn into war?
Minister.
We're in war.
Yes,
The war
that's
started
the last thing
10 years ago.
Anybody wants to see. And the whole point of ensuring that there's a lasting peace and that any deal, if there's a deal, is defended, is to avoid conflict, to ensure that we do have peace. The way to ensure we have peace is to ensure there are guarantees for any deal that is in place, because the surest risk that there would be conflict is if Putin thinks that he can breach any deal that may be arrived at.
How can you trust Trump? They both lie as easily as they breathe.
The Prime Minister is quite right, and we on this side of the House agree with him. The objective for his visit to Washington was to get that US security guarantee for Ukraine, and I commend his efforts in this very difficult task. But nonetheless, on Monday, the United States withdrew military aid for Ukraine. Can he update the House on the steps he is taking to persuade America that it is also in their national interest to provide a security guarantee?
Prime Minister.
Not in Trump's interest.
I'm pleased to inform the House that on Thursday of last week we did discuss security guarantees.
Well done, Lee and all
the President
that,
made
making
absolutely
your own
clear his commitment to Article 5 of NATO, absolutely clear that he would have our backs because of the relationship between our parties, and agreed that our teams would sit down together to talk through security guarantees. I've spoken to him, I think, 3 times since then on the telephone, because it is vitally important that we work with the US, with Europe and Ukraine and make sure that if there is a deal, that he has proper security guarantees in place.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, I know the Prime Minister is not able to comment on specific intelligent matters, and I'm certainly not asking him to do that. However, there are concerning reports that the United States has instructed Britain to suspend intelligence sharing with Ukraine, and other reports that Five Eyes itself may be at risk. We need to make sure America does not disengage. There are some in this House who argue Europe should go it alone. But does he agree with me that without this country's greatest ally, any peace agreement would place a terrible burden on Britain and our taxpayers?
Prime Minister.
Well, I do agree with her wholeheartedly, and that's why in the debate we had just 2 days ago, I've always been clear that we need to ensure that the US, UK, Europe and Ukraine are working together, but we must not choose between the US and Europe. We never have historically, and we're not going to do so now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Prime Minister for his comments on that. He will know that it is not just the security situation that worries people. They are also concerned about trade wars and the economic impact of tariffs, like those levelled on Canada and Mexico yesterday.
Donald Trump. You were excited about him being elected.
The best way to avoid America putting tariffs on Britain is to reach agreement on a US trade deal. Following the Prime Minister's trip to Washington, have talks on a UK-US trade deal begun?
Prime Minister.
Well, I was pleased in the meeting I had last week that we did discuss an economic deal and agreed that our teams would indeed sit down rapidly to talk through an economic deal, and that is what they're doing, because, as she rightly says, that is far better than getting drawn into conflict in relation to tariffs.
Kemi Badenoch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm glad the Prime Minister has confirmed that those talks have started. People across our country are worried. They're worried about national security. They're worried about whether we can equip our military fast enough. They are worried about whether we will deploy troops in Ukraine and whether we will be able to keep the peace. They are also worried about our economic security. Can we afford all this? The world is changing fast, and we need an entirely new approach to our economy and our energy security. The budget last year halted growth with higher taxes and higher borrowing.
Most expensive school in Nigeria.
Yesterday, farmers were protesting in Whitehall again. People are hurting. Will he now change course so we can have the economic security we know we need for our national security?
Prime Minister.
We were doing so well.
Well made. And here we go.
What we inherited was insecurity in our economy.
Can you say 22 billion?
We inherited a 22 billion black hole.
He said it.
And we have now turned that around. We've got the highest investment coming into our economy. We've got wages higher than prices. We've got 3 times interest rates have been cut. That's the difference between stability with Labour and instability with the party opposite.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I commend the Prime Minister for his decisive leadership that he has shown in Europe and at home to bolster our collective security. The £13.4 billion increase in defence spending has been very much welcomed in my constituency of Stevenage. Can the Prime Minister outline how that increase in defence spending will boost jobs and growth in places like Stevenage, and would he like to join me in visiting some of those businesses?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank him for his question. Our plan for change is built on national security, and that has to go hand in hand with economic security. And as we're returning to 2.5% for the first time since a Labour government, that investment must mean UK skills, UK jobs and UK apprenticeships. And I was very pleased that on Monday we were able to announce a new hub, a new spending targets to help 12,000 SMEs access the supply chain, which will boost economic growth, and that'll be really important in so many constituencies. And of course I'll consider his invitation.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I visited Kingston's Army Reserve Centre, met members of the Royal Army Medical Service who'd served in Iraq and Afghanistan very bravely. So can I associate myself with the Prime Minister's initial remarks? On Monday, the Prime Minister rightly said a minerals deal only was not a sufficient security guarantee for Ukraine. But since then, the Trump administration has said that a minerals deal is the only guarantee on the table, and President Trump has removed military aid from Ukraine and said that the British cannot share American intelligence with Kyiv. Both those decisions mean more brave Ukrainians will die and further embolden Vladimir Putin. So can the Prime Minister tell the House, does he still believe that President Trump is a reliable ally? And if Ukraine does not get a sufficient security guarantee from this White House, what is the Prime Minister's plan B?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, look, we work very closely with the United States on defence, on security and on intelligence. We have done for many, many years. We're intertwined, and of course they're a reliable ally. We are operating on that basis day in, day out across the world, as he knows. In relation to the situation as it develops, obviously our main focus, our only focus, is on a lasting peace in Ukraine. There are many moving parts, there are many discussions to be had, but what I'm doing is staying focused on what I think is the single most important outcome, which is a lasting peace in Ukraine, which is good for Ukraine, for Europe, and of course essential for the United Kingdom.
Sir Ed Davey.
The Prime Minister knows we all support him in that effort. But can I take him back to President Trump's reliability? 4 British women have accused Andrew Tate of rape and human trafficking. Yes. And British police have issued arrest warrants. The Tates have tried to escape justice, first to Romania, now to the United States, but I'm delighted that Florida has thankfully opened a criminal investigation. But does the Prime Minister agree that people who are wanted by British police of such appalling crimes should stand trial in our country?
Yes.
And given his assessment that President Trump really is a reliable ally, will his government request an urgent extradition of the Tate brothers?
Good question.
Well, this is a live issue, as he'll appreciate, and therefore I'll tread carefully. But the principle is absolutely clear. Justice must be done in all cases, including in this case. But I won't go into the details because this is a live case, as he knows.
Steve Race.
That was a non-answer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm supporting many parents in Exeter who are struggling to get the support they need for their children within the SEND system run by Devon County Council. One parent told me that their child was excelling, but after undergoing major surgery, she needed additional support to get back into a mainstream school setting. That hasn't been possible due to the disarray of the SEND system in Devon, and this child is now missing out. I welcome the new money going to the system. Can the Prime Minister provide an update on government work that will also reform the SEND system to make sure every child in Exeter has the best start in life?
Prime Minister.
Well, thank him for raising this familiar topic. We inherited a SEND system that failed to meet the needs of children and families, and that's why we're investing £1 billion in SEND alongside £740 million for councils to improve inclusivity and expertise in mainstream schools and to make sure special schools can cater for children with the most complex needs. We're working closely with partners in Devon to deliver an accelerated progress plan and have deployed SEND advisors to offer support to the local authority.
Liz Saville-Roberts.
By cozying up to Putin, Trump is making Europe less safe. We all recognise the need for Europe to adapt. Germany is changing its fiscal rules to boost investment in defence and infrastructure, creating a €500 billion fund to strengthen its future. Will the Prime Minister please consider a similar approach, focusing on strategic investment rather than imposing further hardship on the poorest through cuts to welfare and cuts to international aid?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as she knows, I think it's very important if we're to increase defence spending, which we are, to have that fully costed, fully funded, and to put that plan before the House, which is what I did last week. But she talks about fiscal rules, she talks about funding. I have to say, it was highly regrettable that Plaid voted against £1.6 billion to fund public services in Wales. She needs to explain how that helps her constituents and the people of Wales.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This year marks 40 years since the Swan Report exposed systemic racism and discrimination in the education system. And regrettably, none of those recommendations were implemented. One of the most damning injustices in that report was the misclassification of mainly black children as educationally subnormal, as identified in Steve McKean's BBC documentary. And given the historic nature of this and the impact it had on so many, will the Prime Minister consider a public inquiry to provide justice and recompense for those who have been affected?
Prime Minister. Yeah.
Well, I thank you for raising this really important issue. All children, young people, must be treated fairly, and there's no place for hate or prejudice in our education system. I'll make sure she gets a meeting with the relevant minister to discuss this further.
Chris Law.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week, President Trump has ended military aid to Ukraine, reportedly banned the UK share in US intelligence for Ukraine, and is now seeking to lift sanctions with Russia to appease Vladimir Putin, a murderous, lying dictator. Regrettably, it's clear for now the US can no longer be relied upon for security and peace in Europe. So will the Prime Minister provide leadership to our allies by urgently making the decision to be the first leader to release seized Russian state assets to Ukraine under the established principle of international law, so that Putin must pay as the aggressor?
Yes.
Minister.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, on the question of assets, obviously we're using the profits, the interest on the assets to help fund Ukraine, and we are looking with others at whether it's possible to go further, and obviously I'll update the House if that's possible. But I have to say, at a time when defence and security in Europe, in the UK, needs to be ramped up for all the reasons that he readily understands, for the SNP to maintain its position that it wants to get rid of the single most effective deterrent that we have, the nuclear deterrent, really has to be explained in its historical context.
Duke Vengeance says what? Duke Vengeance says what Keir Starmer wants to say.
Primary schools, starting with 750 schools, including Scapegoat Hill Junior Infants School in my constituency. Under the Tories, only 1 in 10 schools had these clubs. Labour will make them available for all children. This will help break down barriers to opportunity for every child. I know the Prime Minister is as determined as I am to tear away the link between background and success. So will you update the House on how we are going to do that through Labour's plan for change?
Shut down all the private schools.
Well, I thank him for his question. Labour promised free breakfast clubs in every primary school, and the first 750 will open in April, giving every child the best start in life through our plan for change. It will also put up to £450 a year back in the pockets of working families. I'm delighted, Mr. Speaker, to say that 2 of the breakfast clubs will be opening in the constituency of the Leader of the Opposition in April, and I hope she'll welcome them when they do.
Ian Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday, the Prime Minister talked about creating defence jobs across the country as we rebuild our defence industrial capacity. So will he and the government bring forward an urgent plan for skills in the defence sector? And does he agree that does he agree with his Education Secretary that the strategy for defence skills should sit purely under the Department for Education and an underpowered executive agency?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank him for raising this because it is a duty to increase our spending on defence and security, but it also does provide an opportunity for jobs across the country, and that's good jobs, well-paid jobs, skilled jobs, as he rightly identifies, but also jobs with a real sense of pride, and we are working on that.
Emma Lulberg.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My lovely granddad, John Henry Richardson, passed away in 1998 from work-related asbestos exposure. Today in South Shields we have one of the highest death rates from this silent killer in the United Kingdom. Will the Prime Minister please look at introducing a national digital register so we know where this asbestos is and commit to a phased removal of it from public buildings?
Prime Minister.
Well, I'm sure I speak for the whole House, and I'm very sorry to hear what happened to her grandfather. These are just awful cases, and the deaths are terrible. I've no doubt he was a wonderful man. He would have been, no doubt, very proud to have seen her in her place today. And I'll make sure that she gets a meeting with the relevant minister.
Sir Oliver Donnelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. St Hilda's Girls' School looks set to join Emmanuel Jewish Prep as the second school in Bushey alone forced to close because of Labour's VAT hike. This is a double hit to aspiration. First, the parents, many of whom not wealthy, who have described the significant sacrifices they have made to send their children to these schools. And secondly, to the excellent local state schools, including the one that I attended, which simply do not have the places, meaning this policy won't even save money. So may I therefore urge the Prime Minister, even at this late stage, to look again at the failures in this policy.
Massive subsidies, 3 times the subsidies of a state school
I don't doubt the aspirations of all parents in relation to their children. But I mean all parents. What we've been able to do is to make sure we release the funding to ensure that our state secondary schools have the teachers they need. And there's no point the party opposite pretending that they're interested in state education when they left them without the teaching they needed.
Thoughts and first, the private schools,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Facing the taxpayer for hundreds of years. What happened?
There is no punchline. I presume something was said that shouldn't have been said. I'm sure the member would like to withdraw what was said, if they've anything about them. Withdrawn. There we are. Let's carry on. Dr. Maria Timbon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 48 children that we know of have been killed by known domestically abusive parents during court-permitted contact visits, including Paul and Jack Seitz, who were tragically murdered at the hands of their father in a house fire. Their mother, my constituent Claire Throssell, has campaigned against the presumption of contact, which allows such abusers to have unsupervised contact with their children. Will the Prime Minister meet with Claire and I to discuss the urgent need to remove the presumption of contact in law?
Yes, we need to do this.
Can I pay tribute to my honourable friend and to my honourable friend, the member for Calder Valley, who've both raised this critical issue. And can I particularly pay tribute to Claire? Her courage and strength is outstanding. Mr. Speaker, family courts must never be used as a tool that domestic abusers can use to continue their appalling abuse. And we're expanding a number of Pathfinder courts to protect the welfare of children and reviewing the presumption of involvement that she raises.
Richard Ford.
We should definitely.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That is,
Daniel Coffey from Columpton lost his life while serving in Iraq. His grandfather said yesterday that Vice President JD Vance should have a lot more respect for those who lost their lives, in response to the Vance comment that some random country that hasn't fought a war in 30 or 40 years. Will the Prime Minister gently remind the US government the UK was there for the US following the 9/11 attacks when Lord Robertson invoked Article 5, and that we were there for the US for the intervention in Iraq, and they might remember our long-standing friendship when we think about security guarantees for Ukraine?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank him for raising this, and I know he speaks for the whole House. We do remember the role that we've played historically with our allies, and we particularly remember those that made the ultimate sacrifice in that duty for their country and for our allies, and that's why it's so important that we make
should
that
have
point
invoked
today.
Article 5 when we were attacked by Russia.
Happy St Piran's Day, Mr Speaker. To the hundreds of thousands of people in Cornwall and around the world who are today celebrating St Piran's Day, will the Prime Minister confirm our government's commitment to national minority status for Cornwall, and will he join me in wishing Cornish folk the world over a very happy St Piran's Day?
Prime Minister.
Well, yes, let me wish him, his constituents and everyone in Cornwall a very happy St Piran's Day. We do recognise Cornish national minority status, not just the proud, the language, the history and the culture of Cornwall, but its bright future. And I know that he and Cornish colleagues will continue to be powerful voices for Cornwall.
Someone accused him of lying. Is that what happened? Yeah, they withdrew
4 weeks ago, the Northern Ireland coroner accused British soldiers of unlawful killing after they engaged with IRA would-be murderers. After careful reading, as far as I can see, this judgment is based on no evidence whatsoever. Over 100 Special Forces soldiers have been summoned before these inquiries. Not one IRA leader has been summoned in the same way. Soldiers that serve our country with honour, heroism and skill are being punished in their declining years for doing nothing but carrying out their patriotic duty at enormous risks. Now, given how he opened his comments today, which I associate myself with, does he not think that he and his government have a duty to protect these soldiers from such partisan parodies of justice in their declining years?
On the particular case, the coroner's ruling, I just haven't seen the details, I'm afraid, so I can't comment on that. On the broader point, it's right that we should protect those who serve our country, wherever they serve our country. Getting the balance right is critically important. I didn't think that the legislation that was put forward by the party opposite achieved that, but nonetheless, I do believe that in the interests of everybody in Northern Ireland, all those who served and all those who are victims, we do need to renew our efforts to find a way forward on this really important issue.
Mr Speaker, my constituents in Hastings Rye and the villages are fed up with the constant failures of Southern Water, dumping sewage in our sea, flooding and leaving us without water for days, all while taking huge bonuses. At the Environment Select Committee, we've been hauling in the water bosses one by one and hearing about their failures. But the boss of Southern Water there finally agreed to give my constituents millions in compensation for a major water outage. Can the Prime Minister tell me how this Labour government is cracking down on the bad behaviour of the water industry?
Can I applaud her for her dedicated work on the Environment Committee and obviously in her constituency. Last week, our Water Act became law, which gives new powers to ban the payment of bonuses for polluting water bosses and bringing criminal charges against lawbreakers. We are determined, Mr Speaker, to fix our broken water system after years of companies pumping sewage into our waterways and infrastructure not keeping pace with demand.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I pay tribute to the Prime Minister for his efforts to bring Europe together and ensure we can work to restore peace in Ukraine. What the war in Ukraine has also demonstrated, though, is the need for greater food security and stronger supply chains. But if this government forces our farmers to sell their land because of the divisive family farm tax, then it undermines this. So ahead of the spring statement, I'd like to ask the Prime Minister, will he think this policy through again and seek to end it? Because national security needs food security, it needs farming and it needs farmers.
Mr Speaker, we put a record amount in the budget into farming, £5 billion. We've set out a roadmap for farming, which has been welcomed across by the NFU. And as she knows, the vast majority of farms will not be affected by the provisions that we're putting in place.
Lead picture.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. For months, my constituents in Doncaster East and Isle of Axholme have been telling me how fed up they are with not being able to get an appointment because of the 8 AM scramble. The last thing they need when they're ill is to have to pick up that phone and wait and fight again to be first. It's great news that the government's new GP contract will start to resolve this, But can the Prime Minister reassure my residents who can't use technology that they will still be able to book an appointment?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank him for this. Last week, for the first time in 4 years, the BMA agreed the GP contract with the government worth an extra £889 million. Patients will be able to request appointments online from October, but I can absolutely reassure my honourable friend and others that this will free up the phones for those who need them most and help end the 8 a.m. scramble.
Rosie Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
God, not
Under his Labour government, does the Prime Minister believe the UK's estimated 3 million millionaires should contribute more to our vital national security? Or is it just the world's poorest by no longer benefiting from our international aid programmes, or the shameful almost 6 million children living in poverty in this country who should be paying for it? What happened to the wealth tax, Prime Minister?
Prime Minister.
Well,
sorry,
I think
I'm not listening to
all
transphobes.
should and all do make a contribution at this vital time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. These are delicate moments for the country, and the Prime Minister has led with British values, moral courage, decency, as a true statesman, and with skilled and careful diplomacy. Elected politicians in this House, Mr. Speaker, must appreciate that everything we say could impact that diplomacy. Does the Prime Minister agree that a united House could help us achieve that lasting peace?
Well, let me broaden out his words to the whole House, because I do think that it's hugely to the credit of this House that it is speaking loudly in a united way with one voice in the face of Russian aggression. And that is why we must have lasting peace based on the sovereignty and security of Ukraine. But it certainly helps to all of those observing across the world to see this House speaking powerfully with one voice, united across these benches, and I'm very pleased that we're able to continue in that way.
Seamus Logan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Scottish fishing industry, by volume and value, is the biggest in these islands. And within my constituency, the port towns of Peterhead and Fraserburgh represent a very large share of that industry in terms of the land it catch and its processing. Now, I'm sure the Prime Minister enjoys the occasional fish supper. So does he agree that their interests and their future must be secured and enhanced as his government pursues economic growth and resets its relationship with the European Union, especially through the forthcoming trade and cooperation agreement negotiations? So the jobs of the people who work in this sector can never be made expendable for the sake of some other interest.
Prime Minister.
Well, thank you for raising this and do recognise the huge and historic importance of the fishing industry in his constituency and others. I'm determined to make the sector more secure, sustainable and economically successful. We've already secured over 720,000 tonnes of fishing quota for the year, worth up to £920 million, including agreements with the EU and with Norway. We also want to tackle problems about labour shortages that he will be familiar with. I'm pleased that his constituents in Peterhead will benefit from £20 million under our plan for neighbourhood, but absolutely do everything we can in relation to this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Medway Maritime Hospital in my constituency of Gillingham and Raynham has today received a very concerning CQC report following an inspection of the emergency department in February last year. Testimonies include patients having to wait up to 50 hours to be seen and others being told to soil themselves because there were staff that were not available to take them to the bathroom. Will the Prime Minister please outline what this government will urgently do to tackle the crisis in our NHS after 14 years of absolute Tory mismanagement?
Prime Minister.
Well, thank you for raising this case. Her constituents deserve the highest standard of care. The party opposite left the NHS in an absolutely dire state. We're investing £26 billion and our reform plan will cut waiting lists. And I'm really pleased, Mr. Speaker, to say that waiting lists are down and we've delivered over 2 million extra appointments to get the NHS back on its feet.
Final question, Richard Holder.
Thank you very much. A marriage between first cousins carries significant health issues, many of which aren't even knowable until post-birth. When practiced generation after generation, there is a significant multiplier effect. In addition, the real impacts for the openness of our society and women's rights in our country are also significant. After all, there are significant dynamics in sharing the same set of grandparents. On Friday, this government has a choice to let my bill go through to ban first cousin marriage to committee stage. Will the Prime Minister think again before instructing his whips to block this legislation?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've taken our position on that bill. Thank you.
That completes Prime Minister's questions.
Yeah, cousins getting married. That's a good idea, but you know, that's just me. Cut the sound while everyone leaves. There's some people leaving there, but getting up, walking off. Going to do the next thing, I guess, in a bit. They're just, leaving. Everyone's going, which of the 17 bars should we go to and get drunk for the rest of the day? I don't know. Where would you like to go? I think I'd like to go to one of the bars that are subsidised by the taxpayer and just get really drunk. Yeah, let's just get really drunk. Some SNPs, Scottish MPs there. We'll get some whiskey, get some good scotch, and some people at the back coming up, and everyone's leaving. And isn't that nice? I love being a commentator. It's like pointing out what you can see on the telly. I mean, like a royal wedding or one of the royals' carks it, and someone going, and this is the royal hearse going down the mall. People are throwing flowers, and everyone looks really sad. The mood is it's rather somber, quite unusual for a royal wedding. There you go. To have a hearse at a royal wedding, to break with a tradition that stood for over 747 years. I mean, I could do that. If I went to private school, that'd be my job. I'd be on the BBC just describing things that were appearing on the screen. What a job. I wish us plebs could get jobs like that. The fun ones, the easy ones, the well-paid ones. But no. It's not for us, not for all kinds. But, we get on, don't we? We have a good time. We have a good time here on this channel, don't we? Despite everything, despite all the shit. Sorry for that very terrible joke I told. Let's not do that again. Backbenchers should stick to questions that affect their local areas. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of... Colin Baker's right. He says, oh, God, I don't like it when the Tories use GNQs to genuflect before their leader. I wish Labour wouldn't do it. Yeah. I mean, it's fair enough to say, can the Prime Minister please tell me what you're doing in the constituency of West Derby or City of Durham to alleviate the problems we're having in the hospitals? That's a valid question. It's a loaded question. Obviously it's been set up in advance for an answer, a whips question, for him to say, well, this is what we're doing. But to stand up and go, I just want to say what a great job you're doing, sir. Hats off to you, sir. You're brilliant. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say. There's no question, no notes. You're just doing great. Keep on, keep it on. My friend. I love you. And then sitting down, it's like, where did that come from? Okay, whatever. It's a bit unnecessary. We have excluded Graham. Hey-ho, says Plumduff. Yeah. How can anyone be okay with marrying a cousin? They are relatives, and therefore it should be classed as incest. Well, we're all relatives, relatively. We're all linked to mitochondrial Eve. Mitochondrial? I don't know. But no, I agree that cousins shouldn't be allowed to get married because of health problems down the line. I was a bit surprised the cousins were ever allowed to get married. In America, kids are allowed to get married in America. Loads of states of America, like children can get married. There's no restriction on the age of getting married as a child in America in a bunch of states. I think I'm making that up. It's entirely true. But we're not America. We're not America, and I don't want to be America. I don't want to be a place where people go, I'm free now to marry my sister. I'm free to marry my first cousin. Yeah, and I don't think that it's. This is one of the reasons why the working class tend to be stronger and hardier than the knobs, the posh, the elite, the landed elite that rule our lives. And they call us the metropolitan elite because I guess when the land of the elite, people like Dominic Cummings, who's probably inbred, seen the size of his head, he's got to be inbred, come to our cities from the countryside, from their large manor houses, with, on hundreds of acres of land. They come to our cities and then they call us the metropolitan elite. I guess we are. I guess we are genetically superior, if you want to go down that whole eugenics sort of thing route. A lot of these posh bastards who grew up in big stately homes, they're all Nazis anyway. But the thing is, it's what they don't think of. If we did have like the sort of Uberman thing going on, then they wouldn't qualify. They wouldn't be qualified. They'll be sterilised. It's worth pointing out to people when they start talking about how Donald Trump or how Boris Johnson is, really, helping young men. Certainly not helping young women. Helping young men to be better versions of themselves. Oh, no. They're enticing people to vote for them and to support them who, if the Nazis were in charge, which is what Donald Trump wants, it's his endgame, be in charge of America forever, carve up the world between China in Southeast Asia, India in the Indian subcontinent, America and Russia. That's it. That's all he wants. He doesn't want Europe. Europe's too annoying. Europe does like the Eurovision Song Contest and things like that. He doesn't like that. He doesn't like Europe. He doesn't like anything about Europe. The only bit of Europe he likes is his fucking golf courses up in Scotland, which I don't like. But yes, in short, it should be against the law to marry your cousin, but it should be against the law for someone like Boris Johnson to stand to become prime minister. I think it should be against the law for a criminal, a convicted criminal like Donald Trump to stand as president of the United States. But hi all, been watching the Parliament channel live now after your take, says Anne Phillips. Oh, you could have watched it while I was making barking noises over that Duffield woman. Ugh. Don't get the loonies ideas, Graham. They will probably want to marry children next. Well, they already can in America. Deborah says, is Badenoch actually trying to turn the Tories around? Just checking. No, not really. Not really. Beard Math posted in the Discord of the current electoral grid generation, only 6.7% is fossil fuels currently. That's remarkable. But also, it's incredibly frustrating that we're paying the wholesale price for gas on all forms of electricity, which is bullshit. I mean, that's why our electricity is so expensive. If we had energy sovereignty, this is what we've got to start using this term, okay? Can you start using this term? Energy sovereignty. And when all these mealy-mouthed motherfuckers who want us all to be in the thrall of Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Russia and Angola for the rest of time, and the US, dependent on their oil to survive. You say, well, you don't believe in energy sovereignty? Why don't you believe in energy sovereignty? Put the word sovereignty, because they fucking love the word sovereignty. It's a bit of a nebulous word. It doesn't really mean anything, but the idea is we generate our own energy. What's wrong with that? Explain to me now why we need to take money from us, we've worked for money, and go, hello, Saudi Arabia, which already has enough money. Here, have some money to, I don't know, abuse women, kill gay people for being gay, kill journalists for being a journalist, or build some stadiums in the desert using slave labour in which no one's going to be able to get a beer. Yay! That's what footy's all about, isn't it? That $1 million seat in a dry stadium in the desert. The working class game, eh? Hey, beautiful game. Yeah. Fucking taking prawn sandwiches to another level, isn't it? I may have missed your barking, but there was enough barking on the benches on the Parliament channel. So, my ancestors literally built the mining community stroke village I'm from. Proud of that, but no inbreeding, says Jane Lockwood. Yeah, but I would say that if they want to go down that route of, it's like Hitler, isn't it? He believed in this like. The Aryan race, and they were blonde hair and blue eyes, and he wasn't. I just don't get it. It's like when you get someone like, I don't know, Ali Mirage just backing up Trump, and you do realise that Trump will kill you or send you back where you came from, Oh, what? But I was born in Britain. Yeah, mate. Try explaining that to a fascist, mate. Try explaining anything to a fascist. You can't. They're fascists. I think we might be the only country that charges consumers based on the most expensive energy generation method. I don't think we are, Chris, but I could look into that. And Nick says, yeah, you can't get more inbred than royalty. Gene pool as deep as spittle. Well, the Queen and Prince Philip were first cousins, weren't they? I have one female cousin, so the Habsburg option. So was the Queen and Philip both had a grandmother in Queen Victoria, or was it a great-grandmother in Queen Victoria? They were both linked via Queen Victoria, weren't they? Queen Victoria, who thought, what I'll do, this is the way the royals run things. So in our country, we decided that the royals weren't allowed to do anything. The king or the queen weren't allowed to really do anything. And it was all decided by Parliament, and they just signed off on the laws. And if they decided not to sign off on the laws, we'll chop the head off, right? And that had been the case for over 100 years, 130 odd years before this the Queen Victoria took to the throne, and she had a cunning plan. She had this cunning plan. She went, what I will do is I will have lots of children, and then I will marry those children off to each other to other European royal houses. And then those children will not ever have a war against each other. Because they're all cousins. Why would they have wars when they're all cousins? Why would first cousins declare war on each other? I don't know. Maybe you need to ask the, Kaiser Wilhelm. Maybe you have to ask, the Tsar Nicholas II. Just saying. For electricity, says Benjamin randomly. Sorry, I missed the rest of the conversation there. I just like the idea of someone, getting stabbed, and they say for electricity, and he's like from Game of Thrones. That was one of my favourite jokes on the roundup of the year a few years ago with Charlie Brooker. And he had Barry Shitpeas, and he says, I don't watch Game of Thrones, but I believe they were very upset about someone losing their watch. Someone had stolen the watch. That was the problem. And then they showed the clip of Game of Thrones where Jon Snow's getting all stabbed up. Don't worry, he doesn't die. Spoilers. And every time they stab him, they go, for the watch, for the watch, for the watch. I guess you have to be there. Anyway, what else have we got here? I know Tories like being in places they shouldn't be, but being on both sides of the family tree is not a good idea. Didn't close breeding lead to haemophilia within the European aristocracy? Yeah, it absolutely did. King Carlos, was it the second or the fifth? There was King Charles or King Carlos of Spain, and he was immensely inbred, properly disabled as a result of being inbred. And I think that's a point where the royal families are a bit like, well, at least the parliaments and things, the people in charge, the people really in charge of these countries sort of said, sit down. We're not going to listen to the king or queen anymore because all they say is, but yeah, never a good thing. Never a good thing. But in my horror film that I'm writing at the moment, The Hills Have Monocles, the inbred yokels are actually the aristocracy who are attacking our funny scousers who are getting attacked by these lunatics. Jay says, in the late 60s, Middle Eastern countries did not have enough money to pay for their tea imports and had to pay with dates. Then oil was found and the rest of the world had been making them rich. It's true. I mean, I wouldn't go on a date with you for tea, but, I'll have to consider it. When I was in Saudi Arabia, I was in Jeddah, and I needed to get on a boat to go over to Eritrea. It was the last country in Africa that I hadn't been to at that time. And there was one boat that went like once a month, and I was just dead lucky, turned up with my couchsurf host and at the shipping office. And my couchsurf host had informed me that if you're going to ask for something in Saudi Arabia, you can't turn up with a bottle of whiskey, obvs. So what you do is you turn up with some dates. So we went to imagine Thornton's, but for dates. So you go in and it's all these different dates, all these different flavors of dates, all these different types of dates, all these different sugar coating dates and honey coated dates and all that kind of stuff. And you put them all together in like a presentation box and you go, your dates. So that's what I did. I bribed a guy who looked like the Kurgan he looked like Middle Eastern Kurgan from Highlander. And he liked his dates and he let me on his boat, which was very nice. Wasn't Tsar Nicholas II identical to Prince Albert, but they were cousins, but the inbreeding was very clear by how similar they look. Might have had the names wrong, but there are photos. Yeah, something like that. It was a bit shit, actually, the British royal family for not getting the Russian royal family out of Russia once the Soviets took over, once the Bolsheviks won. But there were reasons, but at the same time. There's a really good book about 3 royal cousins by Miranda Carter. It says, Phone Box Chicken, person impersonator, says, a friend worked in NHS referrals, and they said there are pockets of inbreeding causing health issues in several areas of the UK, Bradford included, where cousin marriage is more common. Yeah, it needs to be stopped. It needs to be stopped. I heard some people in the past advocating for the age of consent to be dropped in the UK, which is just disgusting. Chrissy, I mean, like, that. How do you stand up and make that argument? How do you stand up and make that argument? And don't forget, I mean, if you are a 15-year-old and you have sex with a 16-year-old that you're in school with, you know, in the same year, you're not going to go to jail for that. You're not going to be pulled through the courts for that. It's when there's a bit of a gap that's when it becomes a major problem and a criminal act. And yeah, we need the law to be there to protect young people from predators, sexual predators who will take advantage of them. And yeah, these things need to be put in place. And Nicholas II and George V did look like twins, says Phonebox Chicken. Well, there you go. I honestly thought it was already illegal, says Jane Lockwood. So did I. So did I. I let those individuals know exactly my feelings on the matter, says Chrissy. Do you know what I was shocked about? And that again shows my naivety. When all the stuff came out about that horrible Brand bastard, you know, Russell Brand, the stick insect bloke who talks all posh. When all that came out, there were people talking about Noel Fielding from Mighty Boosh and Great British Bake Off, saying that when he was like 30, he was going out with a 16-year-old, Peaches Geldof, who was 16 at the time. And I was like, that's against the law, isn't it? And then, no, it's not. And I'm like, really? I honestly thought all my life that you had, you know, once you were sort of in your mid-20s or something, if you went out with someone who was younger than, if you had sex with someone who was younger than 18, that was an offence. But apparently not. No. So you can have a 30-odd-year-old bloke turn up at a school and picking up a sixth form girl from school who's their girlfriend, and that's legal. Piss off. You know, I'm sorry. If you're going out with a schoolie, you've got to be in school yourself. Or no, just gives me the ick. The late Prince Philip was so closely related to the Russian royal family, his mitochondrial DNA was used to identify Anastasia. That's interesting. I've heard some people in the past advocating for the... Oh, I've read that one. And the one with the massive underbite and underdeveloped genitalia, says Jane Lockwood. Well, that was Carlos. Was it Carlos V? Can't remember. He used to sit in the corner and play with his toes. Later, thank you all for the company. It's appreciated. Thank you very much, Scott. Thanks for your company, mate. And Jane Lockwood says grooming. Yeah. The age of consent should be rated 18 because the UN definition of a child is anyone under 18. Yeah, but yes, I agree. I actually agree on that. But also there has to be a grey area for... You can't have a situation where a 16-year-old has sex with a 16-year-old and then that's against the law. It's got to be there to protect children rather than criminalise them. And I don't think you're going to have to... I think that's kind of like unpoliceable, the idea that you would stop kids at that age from, you know, going at it, exploring their own bodies, etc. But when it's they do this anyway in these statutory rape cases. If there's a big enough age gap, then that's down in the statutory, you know, stuff that the judge has to decide on. Is the age gap. So yeah, but I think it would be a good idea to change the law in that respect so that a man in his 30s or 40s or 50s cannot go out with a 16-year-old, because that's just wrong. That's just wrong. Make it 18, make the cut-off 18, and you're not allowed to be in school. There you go, that's the next rule. They can't still be in school. That's the rule. You got to be in school till you're 18 these days. You can't leave early at 16 like you used to be able to. So yeah, if you're in school, It's cool. Ivan, thank you very much for the £5 super chat, the first and possibly only super chat of the PMQs. Just dipping in quickly, after Trump's latest reckless decision for the US intelligence, will the UK now up its own intelligence sharing with Ukraine? I really, really hope so, Ivan. I think they will. I think there's going to be a lot of things going on behind the scenes right now across Europe where we're like, we can't trust the Americans. We need to keep them sweet. We're going to be doing effectively what Chamberlain did in 1938, peace in our times. There's an argument that he did that to get a bit of breathing space so we could build up our armaments and our defense systems, radar, Spitfire planes, all that kind of stuff, in order to, when the inevitable attack happens, we were actually in a better position. I think that's what we're going to be doing. Not necessarily before we're attacked. I don't think we're going to be attacked, but I think that when Trump pulls all military cooperation, not aid to us, right? They don't give us military aid. I hate this idea that they're somehow being this, wonderful world police officer who we just go, oh no, we don't have to have an army. We just get them to do all our shit for us. That's not the case. It's not the case at all. But they've made it so that cooperation, military cooperation between the US and Europe and the other countries in NATO was a cooperative deal. That's what it was. And the US did very, very well out of it. The US arms industry did very, very well out of it. Maybe the US arms industry realized they can make more money. Instead of selling weapons to countries like us, they can make much more money selling weapons to their own people. So they're just concentrating on that now, I suppose. I don't know. Alistair says, Badger Ukraine flag, Badger Ukraine flag, Badger Ukraine. Blah, blah, blah. Hey, Martin Harrow, there's a 12-year difference between me and my partner, but we didn't get together until she was 24. Yeah, that's fine. Like an age difference like that doesn't matter as long as the person's over 18, right? I think that's just got to be the cutoff. Anything anyone younger than that, it's just, that's why Noel Fielding, who I've got to say, he's always kind of given me a bit of the ick, so I've never really warmed to him. I didn't like the Mighty Boosh like other people. Thought it was this amazing surrealist comedy, and for me, Mighty Boosh and Little Britain, I never got into them as much as other people did. There was something about them that just kept me at bay, if you like. I do like Monty Python. I do like the League of Gentlemen. I do like mad surrealist stuff, but I don't know. Something about it. Graham, did you know our electric what? Our friends electric? Our friends, our electric dreams? Our electric... You need to finish off what you're saying. Graham, did you know our electric? I think Gav did that thing where you try and press delete and you accidentally press return. I do that all the time when I'm leaving messages on these things. Exactly, we need the protection of children first above everything else, even if it means upsetting certain religions. Yeah. Especially if it means upsetting certain religions. They do enough to upset me on a daily basis. I never watched the Mighty Boosh. The trailers put me off. Like Vance dismissing our military, Trump doesn't understand how much NATO helped the US, and Putin loves that. Putin loves all of this. Putin is just, he's a happy man these days. Here we go. Gareth's put his full message in. Graham, did you know that our electronic countermeasures are 10 times better than the Americans? The Americans want them. We said no. Oh, I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. And Jane said, agreed, Graham, both left me cold. I like the Fast Show. I was thinking about like the Fast Show. I was like, hang on, I like the Fast Show. No, I did like the Fast Show. I was thinking about that. The Fast Show only had about 10 different sketches, and they did the same sketches every week, just in a different setup. And they got about 3 seasons out of it. How many seasons were the Fast Show? I mean, if you think about Monty Python, right? They had 4 seasons, and each of those seasons had 13 episodes. I think the last one only had 6, but that's a lot of episodes. And each one had its own unique sketch, and they very rarely revisited those sketches in later shows and did a different twist on the same thing. So if Monty Python had copied somehow through time dilation the Fast Show model, there could be 1,000 episodes of Monty Python. There's like loads of where the woman goes into the place for the cafe and all they have is spam, and then next week they goes in and all they have is some other disgusting British meat product. The difference there is quite startling, because it's like in the Fast Show they only have to come up with a number of sketches and then they were like, right, we're set for all these seasons of this show. Whereas Monty Python, I mean, bloody hell, that the wave of creativity that they rode was just off the charts. It's quite amazing. League of Gentlemen filmed up the road for me in Melton, indeed. Jane, the League of Gentlemen, I always felt it had a real affection for its grotesques. You know, obviously the characters in them are in that are grotesques. They're exaggerated versions of ourselves, but there was affection for them. There was affection for Edward and Tubbs. There was affection even from Pauline with the fucking pens. Whereas Little Britain, it just seemed really cynical. It just seemed like mean comedy, and I will never forgive it for having a disabled character who wasn't really disabled and they were just pretending. That really fucked me off. And it fucked me off at the time, but now with Catherine, who is disabled, and people having that thing of like, oh, you're not really deaf because you can read my lips. How can you say you're really deaf if you can understand what I'm saying? And it's that attitude of maybe this person isn't disabled. Maybe they're not really trans. Maybe it's just a man pretending to be a woman to try and attack me. Maybe it's just a person pretending to be in a wheelchair to get sympathy. Maybe it's just a person pretending to be deaf so they have to spend £3,000 on fucking hearing aids, because people do that, right? Yeah, and that bothers me. Maybe they're just pretending so they can park in the disabled bay. And to make a comedy show where that is a big running gag, that this person isn't really disabled and they're just pretending to be, from two public school boys. Come on, that's gonna wind me up. Do you know what I mean? That's proper gonna wind me up. And don't forget, that when they were playing these, beloved characters, they were always working class. They always put on working class accents or regional accents. It was very much punching down. So no, never took to it. Never took to it. I mean, you might have liked it. I don't know. I don't want to mean, some people like Mrs. Brown's Boys. I want to say that they shouldn't, but you can't help a few things in life. You can't help what turns you on. You can't help what makes you laugh. It's just what makes you laugh. It's just what turns you on. Yeah. As long as no one's getting hurt in the process, I'm cool with it. But yeah, I never really took to Little Britain for that reason. And it's not just like a moral objection. I just didn't find it that funny. And a lot of the characters I felt were ripped from League of Gentlemen, especially the Slimmers World woman who was played by Matt Lucas, where she was just horrible to everyone in the slimming club. And that wasn't based on Pauline in the job centre. Please. I love Mighty Boosh, but then again, Reeves and Mortimer were game-changing for me. Yeah, Reeves and Mortimer. The smell of Reeves and Mortimer were fucking fantastic. It's comedies like Friends, Miranda coupling, and Catherine Tate, and the type I don't like. Okay, so honestly, Miranda, it's just posh private school woman falling over. I don't see the appeal, but my partner thinks that it's hilarious. So, Friends, I'll come back to Friends. Coupling, I never really saw. Catherine Tate, I never took to her as well. I didn't like her as Doctor's assistant either. When I heard she was coming back as the Doctor's assistant, I was like, oh, no, not more of this. Doctor, what's going on, Doctor? Oh, bring back Amy Pond. That's what I say. But Friends, I'll say the same thing that Charlie Brooker said about it. Like, it shouldn't have worked. It absolutely 100% should not have worked for me. Like, I should not have found that comedy funny at all. And yet I did. It was exactly what I wouldn't want in a comedy. It was 6 people who all seemed rich and well off, didn't seem to have a job, and just cracking jokes at each other, making wisecracks. It's quite an American trope, when they're doing comedy. A lot of it is wisecracks. You watch MASH or you watch Frasier or Cheers. It's wisecracks. It's like, oh, yeah, well, yeah. Whereas in the UK, we rely a bit more on the comedy of personality. So it's not necessarily them making a joke like Chandler, which no one laughs at. Have you noticed how in Friends, no one ever laughs at the Chandler's jokes in in the group of friends, he'll make a really funny joke and the audience is laughing, you're laughing at home, and like all the friends are just like, I couldn't deal with that. I couldn't deal with all my mates every time you make a joke and you go, to get to the other side, and then they just sit there going until the canned laughter stops. But yeah, Friends shouldn't have worked, but it did. Like I feel like it did. But yeah, British comedy is more cruel from just a get-go. It usually revolves around horrible things happening to someone, like Victor Meldrew. Just like the worst things happening, and they're just going. And it's based on cringe as well, where you have stuff like The Office and Extras and things like that, where it's kind of like someone being put into the situation. Even like Amandaland, which is now out, and Motherland and IT Crowd. I was thinking that the IT Crowd episode where, I know we don't talk of the writer of that show anymore, but there was an episode where one of the guys pretends to be disabled, to use the disabled toilet, and it's just, it's so cringy. It's In-Betweeners peep show. It's so, they're not necessarily telling jokes, they're not making wisecracks like an American comedy. It's just shitty things happen to them, and then we laugh at the fact that shitty things have happened to them and the way they react to these shitty things happening to them. But also there is a lot of darkness in British comedy that just really isn't there in American stuff, unless it's billed as a dark comedy, and then the Americans go nuts on it. But I think we have like a bit of a vicious streak in British humour. Like we don't really. We like to pretend that we root for the underdog, but actually, it's quite satisfying to see just everyone fail. Black Books, yeah. Well, Black Books. I was gonna say, like, a lot of the comedy there, a character will tell a lie, and then they'll get trapped in the lie, and that's the episode. That happens so much in British sitcoms. It's like, see it coming a mile away, but they'll go, "Oh yes, I'm actually a brain surgeon." And then someone's brain will stop working and they'll be handed the tools to fix the brain. And they're like, oh God, I'm not really a brain surgeon. What should I do? Yeah, that sums up a lot of British comedy. But I think about like Only Fools and Horses. It's not really what snappy one-liners, is it? The things you think about, okay, well, what's funny in Only Fools and Horses? Well, Del Boy falling through the bar. Which, the first time I saw that, was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. I fell off the chair laughing. The 1000th time I'd seen it on recap comedy shows on Channel 5, not so funny. Not so funny the 1000th time that I knew he was going to fall through the bar. The comedy only works once. That's why if you have the choice, and you're blessed by God as being naturally witty and also really good at music, right? Concentrate on the music. Like the Beatles, okay? Because that's where the money lies, because you only have to do 10 years of good songs, or in the Beatles' case, 8 years of really amazing songs, 12 fantastic studio albums. That's all you need to do, and then you're set for life. If you're a stand-up comedian, you can only tell the jokes once to each audience. You can't go back on another tour, like Eddie Izzard tried to do in the early noughties, where he went on the Glorious Tour, which was just a rehash of the jokes he had told in earlier tours that everyone had seen on VHS tape or on DVD a couple of years earlier. It's like, yeah, I know where you're going with this one, Eddie. You're not going to be surprised with your surrealist comedy. But yes. Plus the posh boy nearly always comes unstuck in Black Books, indeed. American comedy equals ain't I amazing. British comedy ain't like shit, says Jesus H. Christ. You're not far off. I think it's really interesting to look at this stuff, though, and see the cultural differences between the way we do things here and the way they do things in America. In storytelling and things like that. And the mentality, like in British books and British, media, the goodies don't always have to win. There can be a bittersweet ending where they don't quite get what they want, but they get what they need. Whereas a lot of American stuff, it's always like wish fulfillment, isn't it? Graham commented on a video of Brutalist Architecture. I commented on a GB News video. YouTube algorithm responds just as a favourable to content creator if you hit the like or dislike. Yeah, if you interact, you just get more of me. That's why I say, if you want to give me a like, that's great. Give us a like. Or you can give me a dislike. I don't care, because it's all engagement. But give us a like. No, seriously, give us a like. Funny poems can only be repeated with a small diminished return. Yeah, Ernie, who writes poetry. Yeah, Get some music behind it, because think about this. Someone like Tim Lever or nowadays Tim Minchin, they can play the same songs over and over again. I remember going to see Tim Minchin, must have been about 12 years ago now, in Melbourne in Australia. And he played the Fuck the Pope song with like he had like an 80-piece orchestra. And although I had seen it on YouTube, I knew all the words. I knew what the joke was. It was brilliant. And when he did Prejudice, where he does this whole flourish at the beginning about there's a word that you can't say about certain people, but if that community wants to use that word to empower themselves, then that's fine, but you can't use that word, and we've all got to live with that. And then he starts singing that only a ginger cannot call another ginger ginger. I knew that joke was coming, and yet it was still a delight because he was playing the piano when he said it. So yeah, if you are uniquely talented and you're funny and witty and you can do music, concentrate on the music and bring the witty to it. One of the reasons why the Beatles broke the US is they were funny. When they got interviewed by the press over there, they didn't just go, "Oh, it's like music." They told jokes about each other. They were self-deprecating. They had a bit of banter with the interviewer, with each other, and people warmed to that. They were like, these lads are all right, these British lads. But if they'd gone over and just been like some artists who are just like, "Oh, don't like talking about me music, it's just one of those things that we do, I don't think they would have made it in America, despite their songs being fucking awesome. But there you go. I might be wrong. May I ask you to please smash that dislike button? More people may find us, despite GB News putting me in a coma for a week. Says, don't want them hitting the dislike button. I just don't care if they do. Martin Harrow, I have to find that late. I saw them being interviewed on a promo talk, show tour, but I've forgotten all about it. I don't know what that is referring to. Oh yeah, it seems like a good. The recent series he did with Ralph going around the country was funny and heartwarming. Will Mellor? Are we talking about Will Mellor? Yeah. I don't cope with humor that kicks down. It literally embarrasses me. I can't watch. Yeah. I agree. Jane, do you know what as well? Like Saturday Night Live did a sketch. I never find Saturday Night Live that funny, to be honest with you, but they did a sketch mocking the whole Donald Trump, JD Vance, Zelensky meeting on Friday. All right. Which is fair enough. It's a satirical news, satirical show. They always take the piss out of what's happened that week. But they had Mike Myers on playing Elon Musk as a fucking idiot, right? Which he is. And the right-wingers were like, "Oh, that's punching down." What? Because he's autistic, that's punching down. I'm like, hey? Punching down to the richest man in the world. Punching down to a man who's slapping food out the faces of starving African children right now. That taking the piss out of him, saying he's a fucking idiot, which he is. That's punching. And they did the same thing when, do you remember when Cummings put his child in the back of a car with two people with COVID, when we didn't know the effect of COVID on children, and drove all the way up here to Durham from London during lockdown when everyone else had to stay at home. We were told to stay at home by Boris Johnson, stay at home. A few days later, Dominic Cummings brings the plague up the A1M here to Durham. Thanks for that, Dominic. And then when people complained about it, people said, "Oh, but his son's got autism." I'm like, how dare you? How dare you use that? But it's not true, by the way. It makes it even worse. But even if he has got autism, so what? Like, how has that got anything to do with the fact that his dad did that horrible thing? Are we going to just run around now saying, well, I know Hitler was a bad man, but have you ever thought that he might have been on the spectrum? No. All the autistic people I know have got a fucking heart of gold and would never dream of doing something as horrible as that. You can't blame people being horrible on the fact that they're autistic and then say, "Oh no, you can't take the piss out of them because that's punching down." It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And what I hate is the fact that it's conflated the way that we react when we see someone actually punching down someone from a private education, someone from private school, someone who's been born into money, who says horrible things about working class people, or says horrible things about black people or working class people, people from different backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, and different religions. And I'm just watching it going, fucking hell. They're using our lines against us by going, "Oh, well, if you can't make fun of people in wheelchairs, then you can't make fun of Elon Musk." I'm like, pretty sure you can. He's not in a fucking wheelchair. He makes the decisions to be a twat. Yeah. Christopher says Musk isn't autistic, he's a sociopath. Yeah. And Early Ben says it wasn't autism, it was Nazism they were mocking. And also the fact that he's the richest man in the world. I mean, I don't know how you can punch down to the richest man in the world. But there you go. They use our things. My mate is an amputee, says Gareth T. His Liverpool tattoo now reads, "You'll never walk." Here's a mind sense of humour. Jesus H. Christ. I saw Roy Chubby Brown tribute act in Benetton once. Oh my God. Jesus. That'd be like my idea of hell. It was interesting. I heard most of the jokes on a Jim Davidson VHS. Yeah, well, that's the problem with the right, isn't it? They've only got 3 jokes. Anyway, babbled on for like half an hour more than I possibly should have done. Need to get on with my day. Got stuff to do. Got emails to write, apparently. So listen, I'll be back at 6 o'clock tonight. We're going to play a game of Where the Fuck Are We? That is number 10. You know, because I just want to do something where I'm not talking about politics. I want to talk about comedy. I want to talk about movies. I want to talk about TV. I want to talk about music. I want to talk about travel. And Ernie Ben says, that is in fact ableist. You're saying that being atypical is tragic and hopeless. Yeah, exactly. And Jane says, we have autism aplenty in my family. They are all highly empathetic humans. Yeah, everyone I know who's autistic or on the spectrum or has ADHD or kind of a crossover between the two, they all have an innate sense of justice. They all seem to have this innate sense of right and wrong and a raging sense of injustice when horrible people do horrible things and get away with it. I mean, that can't speak for everybody on the spectrum, but I mean, just that's been my experience. And the idea that you can't say, oh, this person's horrible, this person's a murderer, this person's done these horrible things, here's all the horrible things they've done. Oh, you can't say that. Oh, by your own rules, I'm going to hang you by your own petard. Sorry, hoist you. I'm going to hoist you by your own petard. You can't be hung by a bomb. Saying Musk has autism is a complete insult to me, says Ivan Ambrose. Yeah. And someone with autism saying that's an insult to say he's got autism. Yeah, he did. It's the ultimate sort of right-wing virtue signalling weirdness that they do, along with wearing poppies and having 3-day celebration for VE Day. You know, every 5 years that we get further away from VE Day, we're going to have a bigger and bigger celebration, aren't we? Until the whole country grinds to a halt for a whole week while we celebrate War Christmas. Yay! We already have War Christmas. It's the 11th of November. We don't need more War Christmas. But they're trying to encourage us to go and buy flags. Go and buy some VE Day flags. Anyway, I suppose we couldn't do it for 2000, could we? 2020, because we were all locked down with COVID. I'm sure Boris Johnson had a nice 75th anniversary of VE Day party. Oops, snap. On the League of Gentlemen, the village Meltham is called Royston Vasey. They love him. What, Roy Chubby Brown? Yeah, and he's also actually the mayor. He appears as the mayor of the town. He is awful, Diz. He is absolutely. I hope that's what you're talking about. And Lee Korn correctly points out Elon Musk uses his autism as an excuse for being a C unit. Yeah. You're not wrong, mate. You're not wrong. Anyway, listen, I'll be back at 6. We'll play some Where the Fuck Are We? If you want to join me for that, it'll be fun. We're not going to be talking about politics. We're talking about anything but politics. Maybe that's what I should call it. Anything but politics. I have a big butt on the front cover. And then, I'll probably go out gallivanting for the evening. What do you reckon? Should we go gallivanting? There's gallows to... Those Vance aren't going to gallop themselves, as they say. I don't think anyone's ever said that ever. Okay, listen, thanks for watching. Thanks for the super chats, especially Ivan. Thank you. And thanks for all your support over the months, the years, the decades. And until 6 o'clock tonight, or maybe 9 o'clock tomorrow morning when I'll be back with Morning Brew, I'll say thanks for watching. Hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.